Welcome back to Just Call Maggie, your favorite source to best prepare you for your real estate exam. I'm Maggie Deyoso, and today we're diving into the nature of agency relationships, which is a part of the general principles of agency section that you'll see on your real estate exam. This is a major topic and an important concept for anyone aspiring to become a real estate agent, because I want to make sure you fully understand this concept, and because of its importance, this video will be the first part of a series I will create dedicated to the general principles of agency section. So stay tuned for more videos to come all about agency. But by the end of this video, you will have a clear understanding of agency and non-agency relationships. We will go over the different types of agents and agencies, including universal, general, subagent, and special agents, as well as non-agency roles like transactional brokers and facilitators. Plus, we'll break down an agent's fiduciary duties to clients, ensuring you know exactly what's expected of you. And of course, I'll be throwing in some practice questions at the end of the video to test your knowledge. We've got lots to cover here today, my friends, so let's get started. To start things off, let's make sure we fully understand what agency actually means in real estate. At its core, agency is a legal relationship where one person, the agent, is authorized to act on behalf of another person, the principal. This relationship is all about mutual consent, fiduciary responsibilities, scope of authority, accountability, and trust. When you become an agent, your job isn't just to assist. It's to represent your client's best interests in real estate transaction. Whether you're working with a buyer, seller, landlord, or tenant, agency means you're their advocate, advisor, and negotiator, all rolled into one. Agency isn't just a technical term, it's the foundation of the real estate profession. It defines your responsibilities, sets clear expectations, and builds the trust that clients rely on when making one of the biggest financial decisions of their lives. Understanding agency isn't just important, it's required for your success on the field. Now that we know what agency is and that the agent owes duties and responsibilities to the client, which we'll get into those responsibilities a little later on in the video, we're going to talk now about non-agency relationships. In real estate, a non-agency relationship exists when a real estate professional does not represent either party in a transaction as a fiduciary agent. Instead, they act as a neutral facilitator to help both sides complete the deal. This is sometimes referred to as being a transaction broker or a facilitator. In a non-agency relationship, you are not advocating for one party's best interests over the others. Instead, you help both parties reach an agreement without providing specific advice or guidance that could favor one side or the other. For example, you might help prepare documents or coordinate communication between the buyer and seller. Even though there's no fiduciary relationship, non-agents still owe some basic duties to all parties involved. These duties typically include honesty and fairness, where you have to treat everyone equally and not mislead or deceive either side, and disclosure of known material facts. While you don't represent anyone, you're still required to disclose any issues you know about the property, and things like structural defects or title concerns. Non-agency relationships are more common in certain states, such as Florida and Colorado, where transaction brokerages are widely practiced and allow buyers and sellers to work together with minimal intervention while still receiving professional assistance to complete the transaction. Let me know in the comments below if your state has transaction brokers. All right, now that we've covered the difference between agency relationships where you represent a client and non-agency relationships where you act more as a neutral facilitator, let's talk about the different types of agency relationships you might see in your real estate career and on the exam. It's good to note that not all agency relationships are created equal. Depending on the situation, you could be working in a single agency, dual agency, sub-agency, or designated agency capacity. Each of these comes with its own rules, responsibilities, and potential challenges. We are about to get into the details, so let me make one thing clear. You, as the agent, must explain agency right at the start of your relationship with a client before they share any private or personal information with you or you show them any properties. So whether you're working with a buyer, seller, landlord, or tenant, it's your responsibility to clearly outline who you represent and what your duties are. This is often done through an agency disclosure form, which makes everything crystal clear right from the start. Failing to establish agency early on can create confusion, lead to legal issues, and even break the trust that's so critical in real estate relationships. Now, let's begin with single agency. Single agency is the simplest and most straightforward type of agency relationship. In this arrangement, you represent either the buyer or the seller exclusively, but never both in the same transaction. In a single agency relationship, you owe your full fiduciary duties to your client, whether that's the buyer or the seller. You advocate solely for your client's best interests without any conflict of interest. This relationship builds trust because your client knows your loyalty lies entirely with them. Here's an example of a single agency relationship. Let's say you're working with a seller to list their home. As their single agent, you focus entirely on securing the best price and terms for the seller. You cannot represent the buyer in this transaction, which will ensure there's no divided loyalty. Now, dual agency occurs when you represent both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. While this can streamline communication and make the process more efficient, it's also a situation that requires careful handling due to the potential for conflicts of interest. As a dual agent, you must remain neutral and cannot favor one party over the other. Your fiduciary duties are limited because you cannot provide undivided loyalty to either party. Disclosure and consent are mandatory. Both the buyer and seller must be fully informed and agree in writing to dual agency. So just imagine you're helping a buyer purchase a property that you've also listed for the seller. As a dual agent, you assist both the seller and the buyer in completing the transaction, but you cannot provide specific advice that might disadvantage one side. For instance, you wouldn't suggest the seller lower their price or the buyer offer less than the asking price. It is important to note for your real estate exam that dual agency is not allowed in some states due to the inherent conflict of interest. So make sure to know your specific state's laws regarding dual agency. Subagency in real estate occurs when one agent or broker works on behalf of another broker to represent the same client, typically the seller in a transaction. The subagent owes the same fiduciary duties, such as loyalty, confidentiality, and obedience, to the client as the primary agent does. I know this is confusing, but this is how it works. A property is listed by a listing broker under an agreement with the seller. Another broker, known as the subagent, works with potential buyers but still represents the seller's interests. The buyer is treated as a customer rather than a client, meaning the subagent owes no fiduciary duties to the buyer, only to the seller. Subagency is less common today due to the rise of buyer agency agreements, which allow brokers to exclusively represent buyers. It can create conflicts of interest as the subagent works directly with the buyer, but must remain loyal to the seller. Subagency is typically disclosed to all parties to ensure transparency. And now let's talk about designated agency. This is a middle ground that helps avoid the conflicts of dual agency while allowing the brokerage to represent both parties in the same transaction. For designated agency to occur, the brokerage assigns one agent to represent the seller and a different agent to represent the buyer. Each agent provides full fiduciary duties to their respective client, just like in a single agency relationship. The brokerage itself remains neutral and ensures that confidential information is not shared between the two parties. So let's say you work for a brokerage that represents both a buyer and a seller in the same transaction. Instead of acting as a dual agent, your broker designates you to represent the seller, while another agent in your office represents the buyer. This way, each party has their own advocate, and there's no conflict of interest. To sum it all up, here's a good cheat sheet that you can screenshot so that way you have something to study with for your exam. Now let's talk about the different types of agents. I'm talking about universal, general, and special agents. Let's begin with universal agents. Universal agents have the broadest authority of all. They're authorized to act on behalf of the client in almost any matter, whether it's personal, legal, or financial. Think of this role as being similar to a trusted representative who can make major decisions for the client, even in areas unrelated to real estate. For example, if someone grants you power of attorney, you could sign legal documents, manage their business dealings, make healthcare decisions on their behalf, and even accept real estate offers on their house. This level of authority is rare in real estate, but could come into play in unique situations, such as managing an entire estate for an absentee owner. Even if the seller is off enjoying a fabulous Mediterranean cruise and grants you, their agent, power of attorney to handle offers on their behalf, as a universal agent, you have the authority to accept offers based on the seller's instructions. Unlike a universal agent who has authority over almost every aspect of a client's life, a general agent's role is much more focused. They handle a specific range of tasks for their client, usually tied to an ongoing responsibility or area of expertise. The most common example of a general agent in real estate is a property manager. A property manager is authorized to perform a wide range of duties related to managing a property. These duties could include collecting rent from tenants, coordinating repairs and maintenance, marketing vacancies to potential renters, enforcing lease terms, and even handling tenant issues. As a general agent, your authority is limited to a specific area. You can make decisions and act on behalf of your client, but only within the scope of your agreed upon responsibilities. As a general agent, you're trusted to manage ongoing responsibilities while protecting your client's best interests. Special agents are hired to perform a special task or handle a particular transaction, and once that task is complete, the agency relationship ends. This is the role most real estate agents take on. Unlike universal agents or general agents, special agents have limited authority. Once the job is done, the agency relationship typically ends. As a real estate agent, your role as a special agent is just to help a client with a specific transaction, such as buying or selling a property. You're not authorized to make decisions for your client, but you can provide advice, negotiate on their behalf, and guide them through the process. Essentially, you're their expert consultant for that one deal. Let's say you're representing a homeowner who wants to sell their house. As a special agent, your job includes listing the property on the market, marketing it to potential buyers, presenting and negotiating offers, guiding the seller through closing, and once the sale is complete, your job is done. You're not managing their finances or other properties or ongoing concerns. You're focused solely on selling this home. The role of a special agent is the most common in real estate, and it's likely the one you'll work in most often as an agent. Understanding the limited scope of authority you have in this role is so important. Not only because you may see this on your real estate exam, but it also helps to avoid overstepping boundaries in your career. You're there to provide expertise and guidance, but the big decisions always remain with your client. Okay, so here's a little cheat sheet to sum it all up again for you, so that way you can screenshot it and reference it for your exam. If you've made it this far in the video, congratulations. You are headed to becoming a top-notch agent, because knowing these fiduciary duties we're going to talk about next are the foundation of building trust, providing exceptional service, and passing your real estate exam. Let's talk about what being a real estate agent really means when it comes to your duties. You've probably heard the term fiduciary duties before. The term fiduciary refers to a relationship of trust and confidence where one party, the fiduciary, is legally and ethically obligated to act in the best interests of another party, the principal or client. In real estate, a fiduciary relationship exists between agents, such as real estate brokers or salespeople, and their clients. Agents must prioritize their clients' interests above their own and adhere to duties like obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care. Basically, this is just a fancy way of saying that you're legally and ethically obligated to act in your client's best interest. And luckily, there's an easy way to remember all these duties with the use of the acronym OLDCAR, where each letter represents a responsibility that you owe your client. So let's go over these. And don't worry, I'll give you examples for each so we can bring these important responsibilities to life. Let's begin. Let's start with obedience. That is where you follow your client's lawful instructions. This one's simple. If your client gives you a lawful instruction, you follow it. No exceptions. For example, let's say your seller tells you, don't accept any cash offers below $350,000. Even if someone comes in with $349,999 cash, you have to stick to their wishes. If you think they should reconsider, you can always discuss it with them, but until they say otherwise, their instructions are the law. Next up is loyalty. That's always putting your client's interests first. Loyalty means your client's needs come before anyone else's, including your own. Imagine a buyer offers you a bonus commission if you convince your seller to lower their asking price. Pretty tempting, right? But loyalty means you'd say thanks, but no thanks. Because your job is to get the best deal for your client, not the buyer or your wallet. On to disclosure, which is being upfront about material facts. Disclosure is all about being transparent. If you know something important about a property, like it has a history of flooding, you must tell your client, even if it complicates the sale. No hiding or sugarcoating. Your client deserves to know all the facts so they can make informed decisions, even if the property is sold as is. Oftentimes, people get confused and think that you do not have to disclose material facts when a property is sold as is, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. A property being sold as is just means that the seller will not be making any repairs or very little repairs. But disclosure of material facts is still important. If you're aware of something that could impact the value, the safety of the home, and if the buyer can stand to lose money from the sale, like a leaky roof, a history of flooding, or a faulty electrical system, you're required to disclose it. That takes us to confidentiality, keeping your client's private information private. This is where trust comes in. If your seller mentions they're in financial trouble and need to sell quickly, that info stays between you and them. Sharing it with buyers could hurt their negotiating position, and breaking that trust could hurt your reputation as an agent. Keep it confidential. It's non-negotiable. Off to accounting, which is keeping track of money. When money changes hands, like an earnest money deposit, you are responsible for keeping track of it. That means putting it into the proper escrow account right away and keeping records to show exactly where it went. This would usually be the responsibility of the broker, but your client will most likely hand you the money, and then it is your responsibility to hand it over to your broker immediately. Organization and transparency are key here. Mismanagement isn't just unprofessional, it's actually illegal. And we end up with reasonable care, which is using your skills to protect your clients' interests. Reasonable care is all about using your expertise to guide your client. Let's say your buyer is interested in a home near a busy road. Reasonable care means you'd advise them to consider the noise, traffic, and potential future development in the area. You are the professional, and they're counting on you to help them avoid mistakes. So to sum it all up, don't forget the acronym OLDCAR when it comes to your fiduciary duties as a real estate agent. Obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care. These aren't just rules. They're the foundation of being a great agent and building trust with your clients. If you're serious about acing your real estate exam, make sure to check out the Power Trio bundle I created that has everything you need to succeed. It's good for all states, and it provides you with all the vocabulary and the math concepts that you need to know for your exam. Plus, It includes practice questions, links to my videos right here on YouTube, and of course, my expert tips. Your success starts here with our Power Trio bundle. I'll drop a link to these ebooks in the description box below. Okay, future real estate rock stars, it's the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's test your knowledge with a few practice questions. Number 1. Which type of agent is authorized to handle all aspects of a client's affairs? Is it A, general agent, B, universal agent, C, special agent, or D, transactional broker? The correct answer is B, universal agent. A universal agent has the broad authority to handle all aspects of a client's affairs, often through a power of attorney. Remember, they have the broadest scope of authority. Think universe. Number 2, what fiduciary duty requires an agent to disclose all material facts to their client? Is it A, loyalty, B, care, C, disclosure, or D, obedience? And the answer is C, disclosure. This fiduciary duty requires an agent to inform their client of all material facts relevant to the transaction. All right, let's see. Number 3. If a broker has no agency duties or obligations, that broker is acting as A, buyer's broker, B, seller's broker, C, transaction broker, or D, dual agent. The answer is C, transaction broker. Remember, a transactional broker doesn't represent either party. They facilitate the transaction without representing either party and have limited fiduciary duties or obligations. Number 4, which of the following is not a type of agency relationship a real estate licensee may establish in a real estate transaction? Is it A, an agency between a licensee and the seller exclusively? B, a disclosed limited agency relationship where a licensee represents both the buyer and the seller in the same real estate transaction? C, a disclosed limited agency relationship where a licensee represents more than one buyer in real estate transactions on the same property? Or D, a disclosed limited agency relationship where a licensee represents a buyer in a real estate transaction while the seller is unrepresented by any licensee? The answer is D. When a seller is unrepresented, the licensee is representing the buyer as their agent. There's no disclosed limited agency in this scenario, since limited agency specifically refers to a situation where the licensee represents both parties, buyer and seller, or multiple buyers in a transaction with their informed consent. Number 5, the listing licensee must disclose dual agency to a prospective buyer when preparing an offer on the buyer's behalf. A, at the time the completed offer is presented to the buyer. B, at the time the offer is signed by the buyer. C, prior to the preparation of the offer. Or D, any time before the offer is presented to the seller. The answer is D. Dual agency disclosure must occur before the preparation of the offer to ensure the buyer is fully informed about the licensee's dual role and potential conflicts of interest. This allows the buyer to make an informed decision about proceeding with the transaction under these circumstances. Okay, folks, make sure to drop a comment below and let me know how you did on our quiz. I hope you found this video about general principles of agency helpful and feel more confident for your exam, because we're going to bring you more exam information all about agency real soon. Remember, this is a large and important section, so stay tuned for our next video all about agency. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on more tips and tricks to ace your real estate exam. And make sure to check out the video on the screen and get a few more practice questions in before your exam. Until next time, keep studying, keep shining, and remember, just call Maggie.